Most people believe kindness is always a virtue. But what if that belief is blinding you to its darker side? What if being too kind, especially in a world driven by competition, power, and survival, isn't a strength at all, but a vulnerability? Niccolo Machiavelli didn't just question kindness. He distrusted it, not because he was heartless, but because he understood something most people are too afraid to admit. Kindness, when applied without wisdom, can become a weapon used against you. In this video, we're going to unravel the harsh truth about kindness from a Stoic and Machiavellian perspective. You'll see how kindness can be a trap, how it's used to manipulate, and why even the wisest leaders must learn when to withhold it. We're not here to turn you cold. We're here to make you clear, to show you how to stop being used and start using discernment, because there is a time for compassion and there is a time for steel. So, if you've ever felt taken advantage of for being too nice, or if you want to understand how power really works beneath the surface, this one's for you. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin.
Number 1.
Kindness as a masked vulnerability. Kindness is praised as the noblest human trait. From a young age, we are told to be kind to everyone, to share, to forgive, to put others before ourselves. But there's a darker truth that most people avoid, a truth Machiavelli was bold enough to name. In the cold mechanics of power, pure kindness, when performed without restraint or discernment, is not strength. It's a silent announcement to the world that you can be bent, guilted, and controlled. And in a world that thrives on perception, that's a dangerous message to send. Machiavelli believed that a leader who is overly concerned with being kind will eventually fall, not because kindness is bad in itself, but because it becomes a cage when used indiscriminately. If your actions are guided by a compulsive need to be seen as good, you lose your ability to adapt, you become predictable, and in the game of influence, predictability is vulnerability. As he warned in The Prince, people are more likely to betray someone who is always kind than someone who is sometimes feared. Why? Because consistent kindness, when unearned, breeds entitlement, and entitlement corrodes respect. The Stoics, interestingly, agreed with this, not in tone, but in principle. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote that we should be tolerant with others and strict with ourselves. But that tolerance does not mean being blind. It means choosing when to be compassionate with clear reason, not as a default setting. For the Stoic, kindness must be filtered through discipline, clarity, and justice. Epictetus was even more direct. He said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." And one of the most dangerous judgments we can make is assuming that being kind always means being virtuous. Let's bring this into the modern world. Take the story of Steve Jobs, a man remembered for revolutionizing technology, but also for his cold edges and fierce clarity. Was he unkind? Many say yes, but was he effective? Undeniably, Jobs didn't strive to be liked. He strived to be precise. He was kind when it served the vision, and blunt when it protected the integrity of the work. His clarity often offended people, but it also built Apple. He understood, whether consciously or not, a truth Machiavelli knew well. People may admire kindness, but they follow strength. So now ask yourself honestly, have you ever been kind not out of genuine care, but out of fear? Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not fitting in. That kind of kindness is not stoic, it's not powerful, it's a disguised form of self-betrayal. You smile when you should speak up. You tolerate when you should walk away. You give second chances to people who've only proven they'll waste them. And you do it all because you don't want to be seen as cruel. But here's the Stoic shift. Cruelty is not the opposite of kindness. Clarity is, when you're clear about your values, your limits, your time, and your energy, you realize that not every situation calls for warmth. Some call for boundaries. Some call for silence. Some call for walking away with your dignity intact. That is not unkindness. That is wisdom in action. Seneca wrote, "He who is too kind is unkind to himself." Think about that. How many times have you betrayed your own peace just to keep the peace with someone else? That's not a virtue. That's emotional self-abandonment. And over time, it erodes your self-respect. Because deep down, you know you're acting out of fear, not integrity. Even in spiritual circles, this idea is echoed. The Dalai Lama, known for his compassion, once said, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." But what many forget is that his kindness is not passive. It is fiercely disciplined, rooted in clarity, a kindness that does not indulge toxic behavior, but seeks to elevate it. That is the kind of kindness both Stoicism and Machiavelli would respect. Not soft, but sharp. Now let's turn inward again. Who in your life is mistaking your kindness for weakness? Who expects you to say yes simply because you always have? Who drains your energy knowing you won't say no? These patterns don't stop on their own. They stop when you draw the line, when you stop confusing being nice with being noble. You see, the world does not need more nice people. It needs more clear people. People who can be kind but not be manipulated. People who can give but not be emptied. People who can love but not be walked on. This is where Machiavelli and the Stoics converge. Both teach us that power, real power, comes from discernment, from knowing when to soften and when to harden, from knowing when to speak gently and when to remain immovable. So here's the takeaway. Kindness is a virtue, but only when it is chosen from strength, not offered from fear. The moment your kindness becomes a performance to be liked, it stops being kindness. It becomes a survival mechanism, and survival is not sovereignty. The world will test you. It will push you to prove your kindness again and again until you break. Don't let it. Don't hand your peace over just to avoid being misunderstood. Practice the kind of kindness that comes with a backbone. Kindness with standards, kindness with consequences. Because if your kindness has no cost, no spine, and no self-respect behind it, it's not kindness. It's surrender in disguise.
Number 2.
Effectiveness over morality. Most people confuse morality with effectiveness. They assume that being a good person naturally leads to good outcomes. But the world doesn't run on intentions. It runs on results. And this is where Machiavelli's view becomes unsettling for many. He believed that in matters of leadership and power, effectiveness must always come before moral purity. To govern well, to protect what matters, to achieve anything of lasting impact, you must be willing to choose what works over what merely looks good. This doesn't mean abandoning virtue altogether. It means understanding that virtue, when blindly followed, can become an obstacle. As Machiavelli writes in The Prince, a ruler who tries to be good in all things will inevitably fail in a world that is not good. The wise leader, he argues, must know how to enter into evil when necessity demands it, and yet do so in a way that sustains the greater good. This is not the abandonment of morality. It is the reframing of morality through the lens of utility, not naivety. Now contrast that with Stoicism. Stoicism teaches us that virtue is the highest good, but not as a performance, not as obedience to external codes. The Stoic virtue is internal. It's about living in accordance with nature and reason. Marcus Aurelius didn't follow morality for appearances. He followed it as a path to clarity. He once wrote, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." But the right thing, to the Stoic, is never dictated by public approval or fragile sentiment. It's dictated by the harmony of reason, justice, and action. So what does this mean practically? It means that being good is not always the same as being effective, and being effective is not always about being liked. Take the example of Elon Musk. Whether you admire him or not, there's no denying that his decisions often defy conventional morality. He lays off entire departments, he tweets recklessly, he makes abrupt, unpopular changes. But at the heart of it, there is an unshakable clarity. He is not trying to be approved, he's trying to be effective. And in that pursuit, he often accomplishes what more moral leaders fail to do. He moves the needle. This is not an argument to be ruthless. It's a call to re-examine what you prioritize. Are you seeking results or are you seeking praise? Because those two paths rarely align, Stoicism warns against the seduction of applause. Epictetus said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because true growth, true effectiveness, often requires you to go against the crowd, to stand firm in your principles, even when those principles look harsh to those still addicted to comfort. Machiavelli understood that too. He believed that those who cling to socially approved goodness often become pawns in games they don't even know they're playing. They are led by the leash of reputation, but the effective ruler, or the wise Stoic, cuts that leash. He acts based on what needs to be done, not what looks virtuous to those who lack the courage to act themselves. Now let's bring this to your own life. Ask yourself, how many times have you hesitated to make a necessary decision because you were afraid of looking bad? How many times have you held back your boundaries, your truth, or your next move, just to maintain the illusion of being a good person? These aren't acts of virtue, they're acts of self-preservation, driven by the need for approval, and in the long run, they cost more than they save. Seneca reminds us that he who seeks wisdom is not concerned with the opinions of the crowd. So stop playing for appearances. Start playing for alignment. Alignment with your purpose, with your integrity, with your mission. That may mean letting go of how others label you. That may mean being misunderstood, criticized, even hated for doing what's necessary. But in the Stoic sense, that is freedom, that is power, and that is effectiveness, untainted by the need for applause. There's also a danger in mistaking stillness for inaction. Some people think Stoicism is passive, that a Stoic stands by and does nothing in the face of adversity, but that's a misreading. True Stoicism is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right thing at the right time in the right way, and often that means taking hard, decisive, and even morally gray actions for the sake of long-term clarity and justice. Kindness, honesty, and generosity are beautiful when they are chosen from strength. But when they are used to avoid confrontation, they become tools of self-deception. Machiavelli's genius was in showing that morality, when blindly applied, becomes theater, and the Stoics add a layer deeper. Even true morality must be governed by reason, not compulsion. So here's your turning point. Effectiveness is not about abandoning morals. It's about mastering them. It's about choosing clarity over conformity, strength over performance, and truth over popularity. Because at the end of the day, what matters most is not how many people thought you were good. It's whether your actions created something good, something lasting, something true. Don't let moral posturing keep you from right action. Don't let the fear of looking wrong stop you from doing what's right. And don't let the loud voices of approval drown out the quiet call of your own clarity. Remember, the most effective people are rarely the most adored, but they are the most remembered.
Number 3.
The adaptable ruler. Rigidity is not strength. In fact, in the world of leadership and personal power, rigidity is a form of fragility. The Stoics knew this, Machiavelli knew this, and yet modern culture often glorifies being unwavering, mistaking stubbornness for integrity and inflexibility for principle. But life does not reward those who refuse to adapt. It rewards those who, like water, shift form without losing essence. The ruler who survives is not the one who insists on being good at all costs, but the one who knows how to be good when it's useful, and firm, even ruthless, when it's necessary. Machiavelli argued that the most effective leaders are not slaves to fixed identities. They are flexible, shifting their behavior to suit the moment. He wrote, "A man who wishes to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroys him among so much that is evil." In other words, a leader who clings too tightly to a single way of being, no matter how noble, will be broken by the chaos of real life. Survival, then, is not about consistency of image, it's about consistency of aim. This adaptability is also a Stoic idea, but from a different lens. Stoicism teaches that we must remain indifferent to external circumstances, but flexible in our internal responses. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." This is not passive surrender, it's inner transformation. It's the ability to adjust your posture, your tone, your timing, not your principles, when the moment requires it. A perfect example of this is Oprah Winfrey. She is known for her kindness, her empathy, her ability to listen deeply. But what most don't see is her strategic mind. Oprah has reinvented herself multiple times, first as a journalist, then a talk show host, then a media mogul, then a cultural icon. She did not cling to a single identity. She moved with clarity, not emotion. When necessary, she distanced herself from toxic relationships, restructured her empire, and made controversial decisions to protect her mission. Her kindness is real, but it's governed by discernment. She exemplifies the adaptable ruler, strong in her vision, fluid in her method. Now reflect on your own life. Where are you clinging too tightly to a fixed role? Are you trying to be the nice one, the reliable one, the forgiving one, even when the situation clearly calls for a shift? That kind of attachment isn't loyalty to your character. It's fear disguised as morality. The Stoics would call that attachment to externals. And externals, your reputation, your job title, your image, are not within your control. What is within your control is your capacity to respond wisely, to recalibrate without betraying your core. There's a subtle power in being able to surprise others, not through deception, but through versatility. A person who is always predictable is easy to control, but a person who can be kind one day, assertive the next, and silent the day after, that person is dangerous in the best way, because no one can reduce them to a label, and no one can use their past behavior to trap them into future obedience. Machiavelli understood this with chilling clarity. He advised rulers to learn how to not only follow the laws of men, but when needed, the ways of beasts. That's not a call to cruelty. It's a reminder that if you always act by the book, people will learn to weaponize the book against you. Sometimes the book must be closed and instinct must take over. Not reactive instinct, but trained, disciplined judgment. The kind that sees 10 moves ahead and adjusts without flinching. And here's where Stoicism sharpens the edge. Because adaptability without inner discipline is chaos, but adaptability rooted in ataraxia, inner calm, is strength. The Stoic does not shift because they are afraid. They shift because they are clear, because they know that virtue is not about being rigid. It's about being in harmony with reason, which often means responding to the truth of the moment, not the story we wish were true. So if you're being tested right now, if your environment, your relationships, your work is demanding a new version of you, don't resist it. Ask instead, how can I adapt without losing myself? How can I change my strategy while keeping my principles intact? Because that is the path of the adaptable ruler, and that is the Stoic path of transformation through clarity. Even Marcus Aurelius, for all his wisdom, faced immense public pressure to conform. As emperor, he had to decide when to listen to the Senate, when to consult the gods, and when to rely on his own judgment. He did not blindly follow rules. He used them when they served reason and set them aside when they did not. His leadership was a dance between tradition and necessity, and that's why he endured. Not because he was perfect, but because he was principled and flexible. Let that be your model. Don't be addicted to consistency, be addicted to truth. Don't cling to being liked. Cling to being useful, to yourself, to your values, to your mission. Because the world will throw curveballs, people will change, circumstances will shift, and if your identity is frozen in time, you will break. But if your identity is grounded in reason and guided by adaptability, you will bend, but never collapse. Here's the core. Being adaptable is not betraying who you are. It's becoming more of who you are. By shedding what no longer serves you and stepping fully into the demands of the present. Kindness still matters, integrity still matters, but they must be governed, not worshipped, in your ability to rule. Your life, your energy, your peace depends on how skillfully you can adapt without compromising your essence.
Number 4.
Feared versus loved. The question is as old as power itself. Is it better to be feared or to be loved? Machiavelli didn't hesitate. He said it plainly. If you must choose, it is safer to be feared. Why? Because love is conditional. It is based on emotion, circumstance, and fleeting perception. But fear, so long as it does not turn into hatred, creates a kind of respect that holds firm even when emotions shift. To Machiavelli, the leader who seeks to be loved invites instability. But the leader who commands respect, even if that respect is laced with fear, maintains order, control, and longevity. This statement offends modern sensibilities. We're taught to be likable. We're told to win hearts, to inspire affection, to create emotional connection. But what happens when those emotions fade? What happens when people who once admired you start resenting you the moment you draw a line or say no? That's when you realize that love, unless grounded in principle, is unreliable. It fluctuates. And a leader, or anyone trying to build something lasting, cannot afford to be at the mercy of fluctuating emotions. Yet Machiavelli wasn't glorifying cruelty. He made it clear that fear must never cross into hatred. The goal is not to harm, it's to establish a kind of emotional gravity that prevents disrespect. The wise ruler is not feared because he is violent. He is feared because he is immovable, because he is not controlled by the need to be liked. That detachment grants him power, clarity, and the freedom to do what is necessary. And here's where Stoicism intersects. The Stoics never argued for being feared, but they argued fiercely against being needy. Epictetus taught that if your peace depends on another person's approval, you are a slave. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that the praise or blame of others is just noise. In that spirit, the Stoic seeks not fear or love, but freedom, and to be free, you must be indifferent to both flattery and offense. But what's fascinating is this. When you stop seeking to be loved, people often end up respecting you more. Why? Because love that's freely given to someone who doesn't crave it feels more authentic. It's not manipulated, it's earned. The person who doesn't chase approval tends to receive it, and the person who calmly enforces boundaries without apology commands a quiet fear, not of punishment, but of loss. People fear losing access to someone who cannot be guilted into staying. Consider the example of Steve Jobs again. He was not loved by everyone. Many feared his expectations, his bluntness, his demand for excellence, but even his critics respected him, and more importantly, they followed him. Not because he softened himself to win affection, but because he held a standard and didn't lower it to be liked. His leadership created products that changed the world. Not because he was warm, but because he was unwavering. Now ask yourself, are you trying to be loved by people who don't even respect you? Are you making yourself small, softening your edges, over-explaining your decisions just to win affection? That's not virtue, that's dependence. And Machiavelli would say, that path leads to ruin, because love fades the moment you stop giving. Fear, when rooted in respect, remains even when you withdraw. It's important here to refine what we mean by fear. In the Machiavellian sense, fear doesn't mean terror. It means the presence of consequence. It means people know that disrespecting you, crossing you, or underestimating you comes at a cost. In relationships, in business, in leadership. This form of fear is essential. Without it, you become a doormat. Your kindness is taken for weakness. Your patience is mistaken for permission. Seneca offered a more compassionate lens. He said, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence. And sometimes the silent withdrawal of your warmth is more powerful than 1,000 words. It creates a respectful fear, not of you, but of losing what you offer." That is what Stoics understand deeply. Power is not about control, it's about self-possession. When you don't need to be loved, you move with quiet strength. You make fewer compromises, you stop performing, and paradoxically, you attract more authentic loyalty. Now apply this to your personal life. Think of someone you've tried hard to please, someone whose love you chased, perhaps to your own detriment. Did it make them respect you more or less? Chances are, the more you gave, the more they pulled away. Why? Because love that is given too easily, without boundaries, loses its value. But when you hold back, when you maintain standards, speak less, expect more, you create space for respect to grow. That space is where power lives. So the lesson isn't to become cruel, it's to stop chasing affection that costs you your peace. Be willing to be misunderstood, be willing to be disliked. Because when people know you are not afraid to walk away, they treat you differently. That's the kind of fear Machiavelli meant. Not fear of punishment, but fear of losing proximity to someone they cannot replace. In the end, the Stoic and the Machiavellian arrive at the same truth through different paths. Don't let the need to be liked rule your life. Don't trade clarity for comfort. Seek to be respected, be just, be firm, be calm, but let people feel that crossing you comes with consequence. Because in that balance of fear and love, true influence is born.
Number 5.
Kindness as a strategic tool. Machiavelli never despised kindness. He simply refused to worship it. In his world, kindness was not a virtue to display at all times. It was a weapon, a tool, a means to an end. He understood what many today forget, that power isn't about being perceived as good, but about using perception wisely. Kindness, then, becomes most valuable not when it's constant, but when it's rare, when it's used with precision, like a well-placed gesture that wins loyalty, softens resistance, or distracts an adversary. But it is never the whole strategy, because if it becomes predictable, it becomes powerless. This challenges the modern mindset. Most people associate kindness with goodness, with character, with morality. But as Stoicism teaches, no virtue is truly virtuous unless it is governed by reason. If you are kind because you're afraid to say no, that's not virtue, that's weakness. If you're kind because you're seeking validation, you're no longer giving, you're bargaining. And Machiavelli saw this clearly. People who lead with kindness as their only currency are easy to manipulate, easier to overthrow. From a Stoic lens, this isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. Epictetus reminded us that everything we give must be aligned with our inner freedom. He said, "Never suppress a generous impulse, but ask, am I giving freely or am I expecting something in return?" That's the test. Kindness, when rooted in wisdom, is pure. But kindness used to secure peace with others at the cost of peace within, that is slavery with a smile. Now consider the story of Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers as the world knew him. He is remembered for his profound kindness, gentleness, and unwavering compassion. But what most people overlook is how strategic his kindness was. It wasn't soft, it was intentional. When he spoke before the U.S. Senate in 1969 to defend public television funding, he didn't argue with logic alone. He used kindness, not to appear weak, but to disarm, to lower defenses, to pierce through cynicism. And it worked. Senator John Pastore, who began the hearing stern and skeptical, ended it visibly moved, granting the funding Rogers requested. That's the kind of kindness Machiavelli could respect. Precise, deliberate, and effective. So how can we apply this in our lives? First, by remembering that kindness is not about being passive, it's about being conscious. You don't have to stop being kind, but you must stop being predictably kind. You must learn to offer it when it reinforces your values, not when it erodes your boundaries. If you give everyone kindness without discernment, you'll attract not loyalty, but leeches, because those who feed off others know exactly how to spot a giver who's afraid to stop giving. Seneca warned of this when he said, "Kindness that's too free becomes a source of harm." He was not telling us to become harsh, he was telling us to become careful, because kindness, when habitual and blind, leads others to believe you lack teeth. And in a world full of opportunists, that belief is dangerous. This is why the Stoics emphasize temperance, the discipline of moderation. Give, but with intention. Speak gently, but when it matters, offer grace, but never when it costs you your truth. Let people experience your warmth, but also let them feel your boundaries, because kindness without discipline is not compassion, it's compulsion. And this leads to a deeper insight. Kindness that is always available becomes background noise, but kindness that is rare, thoughtful, and timely, that becomes unforgettable. When you're kind after being firm, it carries weight. When you're kind after holding a boundary, it builds trust. When you're kind after withdrawing from someone who took you for granted, it teaches respect. That is strategic kindness, and it creates lasting influence. Now ask yourself, where in your life has your kindness lost its edge? Who has grown used to your yes? Who assumes your forgiveness will always be on tap, your energy always available, your heart always open? You're not wrong for being kind, but you are wrong for never recalibrating, because kindness, when used strategically, commands more respect than fear alone ever could. Even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, practiced this. He was known for his mercy, his fairness, his humanity, but he was also decisive, assertive, and firm when circumstances called for it. He never used kindness to avoid difficult decisions. He used it to reinforce his power, not to replace it. His generosity was not a shield from judgment. It was a choice made in clarity. He ruled not with sentiment, but with steadiness. So here's your shift. Begin treating kindness like fire. Don't throw it everywhere. Contain it, shape it, direct it. Let it burn when it must, but let it also warm, illuminate, and disarm when the moment is right. Because kindness, when rationed wisely, becomes a kind of currency, and the less you need to use it, the more powerful it becomes. In closing, Machiavelli wasn't teaching us to abandon kindness. He was teaching us to stop depending on it. He was telling us that power lies not in how often we are good, but in how consciously we choose to be. The Stoics go further. They tell us to make every gesture align with reason, to detach from emotional impulse, and give only when it strengthens, not when it drains. So be kind, but be strategic, be generous, but be intentional. Let your kindness be your strength, not your downfall, Because in a world that mistakes softness for safety, the one who uses kindness wisely becomes unforgettable. The darker side of kindness isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Machiavelli and the Stoics both knew that survival, influence, and inner peace require more than good intentions. They require discernment. So don't let kindness be your default. Let it be your decision. Give when it strengthens, withhold when it protects, and above all, never trade your clarity for approval. If this video brought you a deeper perspective, subscribe for more Stoic truths grounded in real power. Remember, you weren't meant to be used, you were meant to be wise, and wisdom begins the moment you stop being afraid to be misunderstood. Stand firm, walk wisely, and I'll see you in the next one.